Today, we are celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, he's a giant in history, and it's hard to put his life and his legacy into words. Though many people are familiar with his overall impact, there are some key inspirational moments in his life you should never forget. We're going to go through some of them today. First, we're going to start off with Dr. King's iconic letter from the Birmingham jail. So Dr. King, he was arrested for protesting in Birmingham, Alabama, and he penned this famous letter. So he was in prison. He was in jail for 8 days, and he was reacting to a statement in the newspaper from clergymen who condemned their equal rights protests. This all happened in April of 1963. His wife was the person that ended up having to write to President John F. Kennedy to get him out of jail at that time. But Birmingham, the letter from Birmingham jail, obviously one of his more famous works. The next one that everyone should know, remember the March on Washington and what it symbolizes. I don't know if you guys grew up here, heard your parents talking about the impact of this. It was in D.C. It was for jobs and freedom. And from his famous I Have a Dream speech, that's something even today you'll hear playing on the radios.
Yeah, I think his ability in the two timeline dates you've already thrown out there, his ability to express emotion and to motivate and inspire both with the pen and as an orator. I think he was one of the first great orators in American history, and this was one of those times where it stuck out, where this guy was the guy, a man who not even unified black people, unified all people to come together and say, wow, as he speaks, I understand, I get it. And that ability was never lost upon me in how I was raised and my parents telling me about this man.
It moves you. So historians say that this speech served as a catalyst for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And a Mahalia note that I just learned this, Mahalia Jackson was in the audience and she stood up and said, Martin, tell him about your dream. And that was when he went off script. He went off script for his I Have a Dream speech. Absolutely amazing. Wow. So third is Dr. King's march from Selma to Montgomery. You know, there was a movie made about this called Selma. And the march was centered around voting rights for African Americans, and protesters marched 54 miles. President Lyndon B. Johnson pushed Congress to sign the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which helps enforce the 15th Amendment, which says all people are U.S. citizens and should receive the same rights. So let's get to Chicago. I know that's what I really want to hear about. So we know Dr. King, he visited Chicago a lot. However, I didn't know that he actually lived here for 6 months. So Dr. King was here to put in 1966 to push for equal and fair housing for African Americans. And the March in Marquette Park, that's on the city's southwest side, and that's what you hear people talk about for his time here. That's when Dr. King, he was met by an angry mob and he was hit by a rock. White angry citizens, they were unhappy that black people were trying to move into their neighborhood. And you see the iconic march here, and then you see him stumble like this. It's an iconic photo. That when he was actually hit by that rock. That was his time here in Chicago. Dr. King's, go ahead.
Yeah, it was the bravery and it was the courageousness, I think, that sticks out. To really stand up for something, understanding that your life was on the line. But he felt so importantly about the message and wanted to create change, like we talked about us being able to work here together, white and black together. If not for that bravery, this wouldn't be going on.
So Dr. King's last speech was in Memphis. It was the day before he died. I've been to the mountaintop, a speech that you guys have probably heard of. He was in Memphis helping with the sanitation strike. Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young said Dr. King, he ended up sitting down with tears in his eyes, and you know he was a spiritual man, and they felt like it was as if he knew he was leaving when he spoke in that speech. I encourage everyone to listen to that speech if you have time today. Find it on YouTube. And that brings us to our last point, April 4th, 1968. That's when he was shot and killed, assassinated at the Lorraine Motel on the balcony. 39 years old. 39. Father of 4.
Imagine what he could have done with his
historical giant.
Look what he did.
And what
in
he
39
did just
years.
in those 39 years.
It's
radical.
15 years for this to become a national holiday that we celebrate every third Monday in January. Coretta Scott King, his wife, ended up leading that charge.